Chapter 18. The Proximity Effect. The plane is cruising at a high altitude. I close my eyes, lost in thought. Thoughts always about the past. If I ever think about the future, those thoughts tend to transform the known past and present themselves in a new form. This was the first time I was with Yuji away from my home. Now I'm trying to remember what happened to me after first meeting him. I was in a distressed physical state after meeting Yuji that first time at Julie's apartment, but there was no sign of discomfort the next morning. I woke up at dawn in a state of deep peace. I had not told Lakshmi about my discomfort. Instead, I told her in passing that Yuji was a Telugu Brahmin and his favorite food was idli, steamed rice cake. Lakshmi was very happy and immediately asked me, "Have you invited him to our house?" Of course, I had not thought about it at that time. During my discussion with Yuji, I was so engrossed trying to find out the spiritual significance of his conversation that all social etiquette and manners never came to my mind. I phoned Julie. I conveyed my heartfelt thanks and asked her how I could invite Yuji to our house. Yuji was with Julie at that time, and she asked him, "Guha is inviting you. What shall I say?" Yuji replied, "On this trip, I have no time at hand. On my next visit to New York, I will try to come." Yuji went to California and Julie with him. She regularly kept in touch with me through email. I began to get updates on Yuji's whereabouts and what he was doing. After 3 weeks, I received an unexpected call from Julie. Yuji was coming back to New York in the coming week. She remarked in a surprised tone that to her knowledge, Yuji had never before come back to New York so soon. She was even more surprised to think that he would not be staying in her apartment this time. Instead, he would be staying at the Southgate Tower Hotel, situated outside Madison Square Garden at the junction of 7th Avenue and 31st Street. Julie was coming back 2 days early to make the arrangements. The hotel had been booked. The rent was $225 per day. I kept wondering why he would not stay in Julie's house when nobody lived there other than her. Within a month's time, Yuji Krishnamurti again arrived in New York. I phoned him in the evening. Yuji's first remark was, "Why am I here? I don't know why I suddenly came back to New York. I have been coming to the Southgate Tower for many years. Valentine and Parveen Babi and I have spent a lot of time here." I asked him straight away, "When can I come to meet you?" He replied, "I will be in the hotel after 4 p.m. My room is on the 21st floor, and the room number is G." I told him that I would be there the very next day. When I arrived, I knocked on the door of 21G at around 4 p.m. Julie opened the door and informed Yuji that Guha from New Jersey had arrived. I came in and stood in front of his sofa. He looked very happy. He smiled mischievously and said, "If you leave your lab and come here, what will happen to your research?" I burst out laughing. Yuji's grandson Kittu had brought idlis for him. Yuji said, "There was a time when I ate 2 idlis 3 times a day." I stayed for about 3 hours, and after returning home, I told Lakshmi that if she wished, she could make idlis for Yuji. The next day, I presented myself along with the idlis. Yuji was surprised, but immediately instructed Julie, "Give me what Guha has for me. I'm very hungry." He ate them with relish and praised the cooking. He told Julie to have some as well, and she also praised them. Lakshmi had made loads of idlis, and seeing the quantity, Yuji remarked, "We can feed an army easily till they are full. Anyway, if you come tomorrow, there is no need to bring more. These will last for many days." Next evening, I arrived there as usual. I had noticed while working in the laboratory that I was becoming absent-minded. I thought of phoning Julie to ask where Yuji was and what he was doing, but controlled myself. When Yuji saw me, he asked Julie, "What is the matter? Is Guha becoming addicted? Every evening I see him coming here." Julie said with a smile, "Who knows? Maybe you have come back unexpectedly to New York to meet Guha." Yuji pretended to scold Julie and said, "If you kindly shut your big mouth, it would be a relief to everyone." After chatting for an hour, Yuji suddenly said, "Let's have dinner quickly and then we can go out." Julie warmed the idlis made by Lakshmi and gave them to Yuji. Afterwards, we left the hotel. Kamal Grover, the Air India pilot, was with us. In Julie's car, Yuji sat in the front, while Yuji's grandson Kittu, Kamal, and I sat in the back seat. The rest who were visiting Yuji that day were asked to go back to their residences. We sat in the car and moved forward, watching the dazzling neon lights of New York City. The lights in Times Square are the most glamorous. We crossed the square and were proceeding towards Lincoln Tunnel when Yuji asked, "Guha, how far is your house?" I replied, "If there is no traffic jam, it should take about 45 minutes. I was really surprised at Yuji's query. Lakshmi knew nothing. Suddenly, if I knocked on the door with this gang of people, there could be trouble. I was staring at his face, open-mouthed. After a few seconds, Yuji said, "We are ready to drop you home on one condition." I asked what that was. He replied, "The condition is that you will not invite us to your house, nor inform your wife that we are outside in the car. We will leave you at your door and immediately turn back." I was helpless. My wife Lakshmi had repeatedly told me to invite Yuji home, but he would go back without stepping in, and I was also forbidden to call her outside to the car. I soundlessly agreed. I thought he might change his mind once we reached the house, but Yuji stuck to his condition. He left immediately after dropping me outside the house. Lakshmi becomes worried trying to find the significance of such events. Before I went to bed, I suddenly felt very cold. My body began to shiver. I had a fever. The shivering and fever increased rapidly. I thought maybe I was suffering from malaria. The place where I stay has no mosquitoes or flies. I didn't know what happened. The shivering and fever intensified. I felt that the jolts from the shivering would separate my muscles from the bones, and covering myself with layers of blankets and quilts did not remedy the situation. Lakshmi became very anxious. I told her there was no need to call anyone. If the fever did not go down by morning, we would consult a doctor, but as of now, I would try to sleep. Lakshmi began to apply a cloth soaked in cold water on my forehead. I soon sank into the lap of deep sleep. In the morning, I could not find any sign or remnant of the night's torture on my body and mind. I felt I must have had a fever in my dream. The whole day I was light and peaceful. I thought I would get a fever again in the night, but nothing happened. I phoned Yuji in the morning and mentioned the strange high fever, the bone-rattling cold and shivering. Yuji said something surprising. He said, "It is better to stay away from me. You saw in what kind of trouble it lands you." It was as if Yuji was giving me a hint to think of these events in a specific way. I had not considered his presence having any connection to my fever. If I had asked, I knew he would have denied it vehemently. My eagerness began to increase. I will have to conduct all the examinations myself. Thus started a new chapter in my life, the study of the human body. One man's disease can cause sickness in another person. But what else can there be in a human body that could affect the body of another? We know that our knowledge and mental state together cause reactions in our bodies. For example, long-standing worries cause increased secretions of acid, causing harm to our equilibrium. As a result, there may be many harmful effects. The ability to digest food properly may decrease, scarring may take place in the internal walls, etc. Worries can cause blood pressure to rise and even affect regular heart rhythms, and this can throw a person into the jaws of death. People with heart problems are often advised by their doctors to relax and to try not to worry. They feel that peaceful thoughts help in maintaining the body's equilibrium. It is my firm belief that the reason people sometimes feel they are getting beneficial results from visiting temples, mosques, and churches is due to favorable conditions created in the body due to their faith. The body, therefore, fights against the cause of the disease and sometimes is victorious even without medicine. It can also happen that a person who gave his blood to be tested due to a lab mistake may receive the result of a person who may not live long. Hearing the news from one moment to the next, the healthy man's life will suddenly come close to the borderline of life and death. I began to think and wonder. My question was, just like disease-causing germs that work outside the boundaries of thought, is there any unknown element in a human being whose presence arouses a reaction in another? I don't know what there is in Yuji, but it causes a strange reaction in me. Will all this be answered by science one day? Who knows? Yuji will never allow any scientist or doctor to touch his body, let alone examine it. So, it will be unknown to us if there is anything extraordinary there. With his death, nothing will be found, just as living qualities like talent or fearlessness can never be discovered in a dead body. I folded the wings of my thoughts as the air hostess inquired about food. Did you place an order for vegetarian food? In a daze, I replied in the affirmative. The lady placed a packet in my hand and went away. I was then wondering how the journey of my life would continue, what I should do, what kind of activity I should engage myself in. Research work requires so much prolonged mental work and concentration that there is no scope to do anything else. This kind of work causes harm to the equilibrium of the body. As a result, new rules and regulations are always being discovered to keep the mind and body refreshed. It is even advised that we do yoga exercises. Nowadays, corporate employees are being given time off for yoga, meditation, and deep sleep. Experts are called on to advise how to maintain physical and mental health of employees so as to maximize their productivity. But my basic flow of life is trying to take a new direction. Research work is the only way for me to earn a livelihood to take care of my family. I feel I am useless for any other work. Moreover, there is no place in my head for plans to save money for the future. At the university, we sometimes have meetings to discuss where to invest parts of our salary in order to improve our future economic condition beyond our expectations. Not a word of those discussions enters my head. What an extraordinary limitation. I can see as clear as daylight that I am working in order to just earn money. There seems to be no need in the mind for anything else as far as I can imagine. The quest to know the truth has stopped at a peculiar place. If it was possible to know the truth by reading books or gaining knowledge, then the number of people to have gained truth would have increased so much that the earth would have been transformed into heaven. I'm talking presently of the society made by man. The earth is really heaven. Man's greed and his thirst for fulfilling the desires of the mind have created hell here. Why do we want to know so much? From where does this motive to know arise? The thought lurks. Am I going crazy? What is the significance of those extraordinary experiences in Palm Springs? How would I know which ones could bring about a radical transformation in one's life and which ones are an illusion of the I? Is there any experience that is free from samskara? What exactly is experience? Our medium of communication with the surrounding world is through the senses. The knowledge gained through the senses is a small part of the brain's internal response. Until that response finds its way to consciousness as a translation, it has no significance to the sense of I. When part of the response is separated from the stimulus and begins to work in a parallel fashion, it gives birth to thinking, reflection, and decision-making. And through these processes, the I gets strengthened. We try to understand, and depending on our background, whatever gets translated from the response, we identify as good, bad, or meaningless. If the translation is favorable to the deep desire of the sense of I, we get a taste of extreme happiness. This is what happened in Palm Springs. When I thought I had found what I was searching for and had arrived close to it, the excitement created in me was absolutely incomparable. There was no limit to my joy. When a huge high tide flows through a river, the river is in spate, overflows the banks, and creates fertility in the surrounding lands. I felt something like this was happening in my mind, whereas the source of this joy was actually the unison of my lofty idea and the translation of the experience. Other than joy, is there any other direct effect? This conjecture keeps my curiosity alive. I had assimilated many things through knowledge. Many of them created aspirations and desires in me. Then I began to search for their fulfillment. When I felt I was quote-unquote getting it, there was deep excitement. Then again, when I discovered it was illusory and erroneous, there was deep disappointment. At present, my primary concern is to know whether it is possible to have any direct proof of whatever I am searching for beyond this apparent knowing and relative understanding that is born out of my expectations. How does one get to know this? If one tries to see the philosophical implication and fundamental truth, tries to present it in front of others, tries to find the expression of such truth in the world of functional existence, then all joy ends. The value of experience is very strange. It can never have the last word. Even though in my mind's eye I had visions of God and heard His voice, it is impossible to prove the validity of such experiences. Human experience itself is such a strange phenomenon. It is difficult to know what the use is of one's experience in one's own life, let alone to understand its effect on others. Since it is impossible to know the future with certainty, the thought of trying to know which experience can change one's life is absolutely meaningless. Every experience is like a short-lived passing mist. Like reading a book and becoming illuminated, our internal mindset is a rainbow, glorious for a short while. After some time, everything is as it was before. I had so many experiences during meditation, so many spiritual significant dreams, actual visions while fully awake, experiences of revelation in my awakened state, which is called Shruti. Although I had no words for these, even then, due to lack of basic fundamental changes in my nature and mindset, they were disregarded as illusion. But something happened in Palm Springs, something causing ceaseless stirrings in my body. The trouble is, how can I deny all this? Our deep desire for experience sometimes creates an illusory experience. But these acausal physical movements taking place in my body are so much outside my habitual thinking that I cannot accept that it is happening due to the strength of my suggestive power. It is my firm belief that one cannot initiate these bodily changes by the strength of the mind or with its help. A woman cannot become pregnant by merely thinking about it and strength of mind. It is a bit like that. End of chapter 18.